Good afternoon. I hope you're all suitably refreshed. Good. This is going to be a lively and interactive session. So anyone thought they were going to gently snooze their lunch off whilst we all do the talking is sadly mistaken. We're all going to contribute to this session in order to maximize your input and to maximize the outcome for what I think is a very, very important discussion around infrastructure. Infrastructure lies at the heart of development. Just a few months ago, I was in Ahmedabad for a meeting of the Africa Development Bank. And we were looking there at the issues of agriculture and renewable energy. And what was crystal clear was the absolute centrality of making sure that we get the infrastructure right if we are to build sustainable growth and employment in Africa at this particular juncture in our history. That's clearly central to the agenda of the new government in Ghana, and we're privileged today and this afternoon to have with us in the room and on the platform a glittering array of Ghana's ministerial and civil service talent. So we're going to have an interesting and important session. We're going to be led in that by the Honourable Minister for Railway Development, Joe Ghartey, who's going to address us for about 10, 12 minutes. We're then going to have a conversation up here with the panelists and then broaden that out into a wider conversation with you all. It's my particular pleasure to introduce the Honourable Minister to you. He's someone who will be very well known to you, not least from his previous incarnation as Attorney General and Minister of Justice in Ghana. But as someone who myself made the transition in this country from being police minister to being financial secretary to the Treasury, all I will say is that it's a transition that is a liberation for anyone who has worked in the field of justice and home affairs. This is a particular liberation, it seems to me, Mr. Minister, for you, because His Excellency the President has given you an economic brief that's at the heart of the reconstruction of Ghana's infrastructure and indeed at the heart of the developmental challenges that not just Ghana but the continent faces. And I just give you this one example of this. As a little boy growing up in Achimtafo in Ghana, and before that in the Gold Coast, I would talk to my grandfather, who was a cocoa farmer. And he would talk to me as grandfathers do, as I now do. I'm a grandfather of 7. I know, it's incredible, isn't it, in one so young? But he would talk to me of the past, as grandfathers do. And he would tell me, and a number of you will know that, and the Honourable Minister certainly knows it, that in his time, when he was building up his cocoa farms in Achimtafo, right next door to the Cocoa Research Centre, right next door because the land for the Cocoa Research Centre was expropriated from my grandmother by the colonial authorities. That's the downside of colonialism. But we haven't put in any claim for compensation, but I never hesitate. I never hesitate to remind my compatriots of that fact. But he was the beneficiary at that time of a direct rail link between Achimtafo and Takoradi. And that massively lowered the cost of transporting his cocoa to then the Gold Coast, Ghana's main port. That railway link, as you know, Honourable Minister, no longer exists. If only it did, it would considerably enhance the productivity of that region, as railway links have enhanced the productivity of every region where they exist. And we saw that very recently in Ahmedabad when we visited there for the Africa Development Bank meeting. So, Minister, you have been given a key brief and we wish you well in it, and we look forward very much to hearing from you this afternoon.
If you permit me to just continue on that cocoa theme. The first rail line was laid in Ghana in 1898. It was laid in a place called Sekendi, which is part of my constituency. And the original aim for laying the rail line was because of tin. A governor had come from Malaysia called Governor Mackay, who decided that he would use rail line to get gold along what is called the Western Line. What happened was that it transformed the cocoa sector, because the farmers who were rolling cocoa along the Western Line on barrels to the coast or carrying cocoa on their head suddenly found that there was a cheaper means of transport. They grew so much cocoa that by the 1930s, there was a food shortage in Ghana. Another thing that happened was that it made Ghana the largest producer of cocoa, and it made the Gold Coast the richest African colony for the British. And so even though it was done not for cocoa, it transformed cocoa production. And that's what the rail does. The rail transforms the economy. And Ghana became the largest producer of cocoa, not because of good agricultural practices, not because of any massive intervention in agriculture, because transportation, because of the rail. And that is why our president says that one of the tragedies of our post-colonial development is the fact that we've neglected the rail. Now, the president has said that's one of the tragedies, and he said also that one of the legacies he wants to leave behind is a modern rail network. And that's why perhaps he set up the Ministry of Railway Development. I used to work in the president's office. He was my pupil master. And I remember as a young lawyer, he gave me a very difficult murder brief, legal aid. And I went back to him after 2 days. I said, I used to call him, no, I can't do it. He said, why? I said, it's too difficult. He said, well, bad briefs make good lawyers. And when he gave me this brief, I remember what he said to me years ago. And he said to me, I gave it to you because I know you are not easily intimidated. Out of 947 kilometers of rail that was left to us at independence, there's still only 13% left. And the 13% is hardly operational. We have a few kilometers along what is called the Eastern Line. Accra to Nsawam, 40 kilometers, hardly works. And we have Accra to Sekendi to Nsuta, which is about 64 kilometers, and that's what we use to pull our manganese. Railway workers of 1,440 get paid if they're able to pull 70,000 tons of manganese a month. Now we have our existing rail line is made up of what is called the Western Line, the Eastern Line, and the Central Line. Let me talk a bit about the Western Line. That's where it started, 1898. It went from Sekendi, Takoradi on the coast, the port, and it went to Kumasi, which is the second largest city in Ghana. Remember these dates, 1898. It reached Kumasi in 1903, 5 years. In 5 years, they had done about 300 kilometers of rail. That time, that technology. So when people tell us that we have an ambitious program because we want to finish 1,400 kilometers of rail before this administration's term comes to an end in 2020, I say that, well, if this is, it's not even ambitious. Because if they could do about over 300 kilometers in 1898, then we should bow our heads down in shame if we can't do 1,400 kilometers within this time. The Western Line today is the most economically productive line. I say that because there are off-takers sitting on the line. There's manganese, Ghana manganese, which is 64 kilometers, 64 on the Western Line. Ghana manganese today produces about 2 million tons of manganese a year. Out of this 2 million tons, the railway moves only about less than 1 million. They are seeking to move all their manganese onto the rail line, but they've just been taken over by a Chinese company. And I've had meetings with them, and they want to increase their production to 10 million tons. Ghana Bauxite is another major mining operation which is on that line. And cocoa is also, there's a lot of cocoa in that area. Fortunately, because the rail line doesn't exist, the last time we carried cocoa on train in Ghana is 2006. The person who carried it is now the managing director of the Ghana Railway Company. The Eastern Line starts from Accra and passes through Lord Boateng's area and ends up also in Kumasi. Now, the Eastern Line has on it a lot of cocoa as well, and it also has bauxite which is yet to be mined at Chebi. Chebi is the president's hometown, but that's not why it's going to be mined. It's going to be mined because, because there's bauxite there. We are determined, and even in the last administration, that we will empower between 2001 and 2008 to set up an integrated aluminum industry. And it means that we need this trade in certain places. Now, the central line moves from the center of Ghana to the north of Ghana. On this line also, there are mineral deposits, and this line connects us to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is north of Ghana. About 2 months ago, I had the opportunity of visiting Burkina Faso with our president, and we are about to enter into a treaty which will see us ensure connectivity between these two countries. Burkina Faso have above them other landlocked countries, and Burkina Faso is also very rich in mineral resources. This basically is what is called the Ghana Railways Master Plan. It was done in 2013 by a group of Italian architects called TEAM. I think they are represented here. And they did basically, they set it out in 6 phases, and it covers about 4,000 kilometers. We are focusing on phase 2 as an investment potential, and the phase 2 is the eastern line, the western line, and the central spine, and bits of phase 3 also, which leads us to the mining areas. These are priority projects. Phase 1, these are priority projects. That's phase 2. Phase 2 up there, 339 kilometers, Takoradi to Kumasi, 300 kilometers, Accra to Kumasi, 595 kilometers, Kumasi to Paga. We're also going to do a bit of phase 3 that takes us to mines. Yinehini is a major bauxite deposit. It is estimated that when we take that bauxite out of the ground and refine it, we have $460 billion. Where Yendi also has a significant iron ore deposit. Now, all these estimates that you see there were done by Team Enigen in 2013. I'm a lawyer. I've quizzed them on how they could do these estimates without having a detailed design. They assure me, after I cross-examined them for about 30 minutes, I felt confident enough to be able to repeat what they said. So these are estimates. The western line is 339 kilometers. The estimated cost is $1.9 billion. The eastern line is 300 kilometers. It's estimated at $1.7 billion. And the central spine is 595 kilometers. It's estimated at $3.4 billion. Kumasi to Yinehini is where the bauxite is. And Yendi is where the iron ore is. So we've calculated that as well. And it gives us a total of about $7.8 billion. Now that is our program for our rail network, modernizing our rail network. The outcomes, to tell you, we'll be taking quote to Newcastle. You know what rail does to Ghana, what rail does to an economy. But to transform Ghana, there are about 5 million people staying in the capital of Accra. There's gridlock constantly. People spend 4 hours to work and 4 hours back from work. Even the transportation system in Accra, the city will transform. Agriculture will transform. In the process, we intend to create new human settlements. We have a program that we call Associated Infrastructure, where we'll create human settlements in the process, minimum of 3. The first one we are going to create at Akosombo, which is on the largest man-made lake in Africa. I believe it's even in the world. Now, we are crossing Akosombo, 84 kilometers, where we go onto the man-made lake, and on the banks of the man-made lake, we intend to create a new settlement for industrial estate, for tourism, as well as housing. In the middle of Ghana, where the 3 lines will meet, the western line, the central line, and the eastern line, we intend to create another new settlement, a new city. The last time we created a new city in Ghana was 1960. This president intends to do that, and it's possible. And the third new city we intend to create a Paga, which is a border between Ghana and Burkina Faso. All that will come under the third tier of our program, which we call from stations to cities, associated infrastructure. We are going to transform the economic corridor of the country. Wherever the rail goes, like the angel, to be like touched by an angel, that community will be touched by the railway. And there's research for that. And the research comes from here. It comes from the LSE. I read it. You can find it online. And what they talk about is they talk about the persistence of economic development wherever the train touches. And even though the rail network has broken down and only 13% exists, where the train has passed before 100 years ago is more developed than where the train did not pass. And so we have an exciting rail project. We are currently changing the legal and institutional framework which will allow us to accept that level of investment. We are looking for exciting people who are prepared to think outside the box. Government is putting its own money inside. Some of the money is coming from GOG. We have some of the off-takers are prepared to put money inside. Of course, we may be forced to take some concessional loans, but we are open to listen to people. We are a government in a hurry. I'm a man in a hurry, and thank you very much.